Good morning, everyone from Keycon. We have people from across Canada this morning. And Susan, you're Alexandra this morning, but
sorry,
go
better
for it.
My name here. Rename to Susan. That would make sense. Yeah, so I'm joining this panel on crafting an opening hook. I'm a writer, editor, teacher, and presenter. I've got here's the first book of my series, Bursts of Fire, got the Aurora Award for Best YA in last year, and book 2, Flights of Marigold, is nominated for an Aurora this year, so I'm really excited about that. I also work for Laxa Media Groups as an editor, and we've got a series of award-winning anthologies, and I teach at the Alexandra Center and present places like Keycon, so that's me.
Stephen, you're also on one of the panelists. Please present yourself.
Okay, I'm Stephen B. Pearl. The B makes it easy to find me on the internet. I'm a multiple published author across the speculative fiction field, and the opening for my novel Tinker's Plague has become part of the curricula of the MAC writing program. In part because I took the person's class years ago, and when she saw the opening hook, she said, "This sort of shows what we want to do with an opening hook." So that's me.
Thank you. We don't appear to have Reed here, and I don't see him in the programming book. But Barb, would you introduce yourself as well, please? Because you're becoming an impromptu panelist.
Wait a minute. I've got to get myself organized here. I was just planning on listening.
Oh, no. You've got a wealth of background. You need to be sharing.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your glory with me. And because that's what most writers get. They get glory and not much else.
True.
So for those who are listening, my name is Barb Goller-Smith, and my biggest claim to fame lately is I actually wrote a short story for the first time in many a long time, which has appeared in Galaxy's Edge magazine and is up for an Aurora Award this year for Best Short Story, which I'm beyond pleased about. And I looked at the beginning of that and went, okay. And I also edit for OnSpec magazine, which is over 30 years old. Unbelievable. And so I see a lot of stories and a lot of beginnings. So I'm very keen to hear what everybody has to say about beginnings. That's it for me.
All right. I don't have any specific questions for anyone. So Susan, are you going to lead the panel this morning?
Well, that's a surprise to me, but if nobody else is, I can.
Yeah.
If you'd rather, I can take it.
I thought Stephen was maybe the moderator.
Yes.
Yeah, I expected to come in as moderator, but I'm not going to push myself forward if somebody else wants
No, please go ahead. I moderated yesterday and that was great. Now I'd just be very happy to just be a panelist.
Okay.
I'm good. Go for it, Stephen.
Okay, well, I think there are multiple ways of doing a good opening. And one that I'm particularly fond of is what I call the James Bond style. Because if you look at the Bond films, they always start with this action sequence. And it is not necessarily tightly connected to the rest, but it does establish his world. How do people like to go about getting that establishing sequence in your own work? And we'll start with Sue.
Okay, so one of the things I think is really important to think about when you're thinking about your opening is who your audience is and what their expectations are. So I tend to approach my writing from a more commercial point of view. That's what I do. But there are equally legitimate ways to craft an opening from, say, a more literary perspective. And it, there tends to be a kind of a snobbery, I think, and division in some of the genres, where you've got, the literary people will kind of look down on the genre people and say, well, that's just commercial fiction, it's not very good. But you get the reverse snobbery too. The genre people say, oh, those literary people, they just think they're so great. And so there's this sort of value gradient. But in actual fact, both types of writing are equally valid. It's a question of lining up what you are doing with the correct reader. So for instance, if I open a book, and I start reading at the beginning, and it's got a dragon, and the dragon's attacking, and I'm so excited, and I'm right in there, and that's my book. I love it. But if I'm a literary reader and that dragon's attacking on page 1, I might think, I don't know what's going on. Where'd the dragon come from? I don't know. And they close the book. You get another book, you open it up to page 1, and it's beautifully setting the scene, giving you characters, kind of easing you into a world. You get a literary reader who's saying, oh, it's beautiful. I'm just immersing myself in this world. And they love it. And then you get a genre reader who says, boring, I'm not going to read that. Nothing's happening. So I think that's one of the considerations. And I've been talking quite a bit. I have more to say, but I'll pass it on to, how about Barb? Any thoughts on openings?
Oh God, openings have been my thing, my bugaboo since at least 1994. And I used to belong to a group on a group thing called CompuServe, and CompuServe had all these special interest group forums, and they grew more and more and more because people talk about other stuff besides work, right? And one of the things that we did in this group, we were waiting for this online workshop with some pros at the time, and to keep ourselves occupied, we started having little tasks and contests and things. One was a best openings contest, and to make it easier for everybody to read, we minimized the word count to 150 words, because that's how many words are on a page, your first page of a short story or a novel manuscript, mostly short stories. And we had to catch the reader's interest in those 150 words. And we learned the 3 basics. You have a character with some sort of a conflict or problem in some kind of a setting milieu. And you had to have at least 2 of those 3 if you wanted to engage the reader. The editor would turn the page and read the next page. And it was really challenging when you discover then where your strengths and weaknesses are. I could write a setting like nobody's business, right? I could go on for pages and pages and pages about the wind and the trees and the grass and the flowers, and that was quickly beaten out of me. So openings are important, and they are still important because those are the things that I look for as an editor. I look for that. And in my own work, I try really hard to cut to the chase and hit the ground running. And for those people, as you say, Susan, who are literary, they can wait a couple of paragraphs, usually. So I'm pretty hardcore when it comes to that. Don't waste my time with how pretty it is. I don't need to know that unless the setting is part of the character, is important to the story, if that makes any sense. Because sometimes settings are characters. So, but that's very rare. So That's it. Stephen, you must have something to say about that.
Well, I just want to say I love what you said about the mutual snobbery between the literary and the commercial fiction writers, because I tend to be very commercial, and that's my thrust. And I've been on some panels where they were, you can't do an opening like that. You're not giving us literary. You're not giving us description. And it's sort of, yeah. I would, as you say, I would close the book and set it aside if it started like that, and have done so. One of the big things I like to do with an opening is try to very quickly get them asking questions. You know, as the boy sprinted along the crumbling asphalt road, his twisted left arm flailing in his haste.
Oh.
That's my first line in Tinker's Plague, and it's sort of it's action. He's sprinting, but why is this kid with the crippled arm running? What's so important that it's dragged him out? And I think that that's an important thing. How do you go about getting that question in really quickly?
Something that you just said really twigged my
Your twig.
my twig. Yes. I'm just gonna have a quick look. I've got a quote for you. Here it is. This is from Orson Scott Card. He wrote a book called How to Write Science Fiction and Fantasy. And on page 88, he writes, too much raw information up front, and the reader can't keep it all straight. Too little information, and the reader can't figure out what's happening. The result in either case is confusion, impatience, boredom. Instead, information must be trickled into a story, always just enough to know what's happening. If the audience must know a fact in order to understand what's going on, then you must either present the information at the moment or make sure the information was available and memorable earlier in the text. So I think the first part of that is kind of the important part. It's, I mean, I've heard even experienced writers who've really complained about how do you craft that first sentence, that first paragraph, because you have so much to do all at once, and you have to do it all at once. Everything is important at the same time, right? Especially in science fiction and fantasy, where we're writing other worlds, like whether they're fantastical worlds and secondary worlds, or whether they're like outer space or even the near future that's a lot like our world, but there's really important differences. You need to convey where and when and what's happening immediately so that the reader's comfortable. And even if they're comfortable in the alienness, comfortable that, okay, this is an alien environment, I'm going to have a lot of questions, but I know I have confidence in the writer that they're going to answer those questions, right? So yeah, you need to give them a real sense of immersion and comfort, and I'm there. And at the same time, just like you said, Stephen, those questions that make you want to keep reading, that you finish that first sentence. And I attended a lovely seminar with Nancy Kress. If you've read any of her work, she's an amazing writer, and she's also an amazing teacher. And she did a whole session on tension at various levels, like tension in the sentence, tension in the paragraph, tension in the scene, tension in the book, right?
Oh yeah, that was so good.
You were there, right?
Yeah.
She's awesome. But she was talking about how you even can create tension in a single sentence. So I would like to share with you, I've got 6 examples, but I'll just share 1 or 2 right now from different places. N.K. Jemison's The Fifth Season. This is the first sentence of the book, right? Let's start with the end of the world, shall we? Get it over with and move on to more interesting things. I mean,
Oh, it's Susan, you actually mentioned Nancy Kress. I actually have one of her books. This is actually
oh,
a
she's
book I
good.
received
So
from,
good.
I actually received this as part of my training from the Stratford Career Institute when I was studying creative writing and correspondence.
Oh, what a good idea. Beginnings, middles, and ends.
Mhm.
Yeah, one of the things that I absolutely love about her books is that, just have a look at it. Each section is really short. So her chapters are so well organized. You know what exactly it's about, but you can read a short sentence and digest it. She gives you the information with the examples in such a clear way and very succinct.
Yep. Yep.
She's a great teacher.
Okay.
So.
Barb, do you have anything you want to add?
A little bit. One of the things that I always like is a little hint right away that something is going to be important. And I actually have a first line I would like to share with you, and it's really just the first sentence. And I think it's one of our best, and it's from a contemporary romantic comedy, so it's non-genre but definitely commercial, right? Sagehood required more than a massive headstone and a dozen village idiots. So I like to think that gives a real sense that the whole everything that comes after is going to be light but complicated. And so I sort of like that. And I was looking at some beginnings of different things. I have contemporary romances that in Cowboy Up by Alberta romance writer Michelle B. The first line is, "You're shitting me, right?" So I really
more.
those are the kinds of things that instantly grab me and pique my interest. So yeah, and I forgot exactly what your question was, Stephen.
Yeah, I think
Yes, I'm sorry. I just wanted to come in. I love starting with a question. I love books because that do that. And from Random Dingoes by Ira Naiman, and with the title, you already have a sense that this is going to be comedic.
Right.
But his opening line is, "Do you mind?" And and then it goes into this repartee between the two characters. But it's great to start like that. Another aspect, and we talked about, you have to do so much lifting with that first line, with that first paragraph.
Yeah.
One of the things I view it as planting seeds. You don't have to give a massive description, as far as I'm concerned, in any case. But you have to plant seeds that people, as they go along, they are saying, "Oh yeah, this fits with that." If they really analyzed it, the description that comes later on. An agrarian setting, for example, he scrambled over a wooden gate and ran to an ancient van sitting in a field. So immediately you've got this place, it's agrarian.
Yeah.
And then the van expands out to be described as having solar panels on it. And you're getting this impression that immediately an impression of post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
But you don't have to expand and give great description. Well, I didn't have to expand and give great description until later. What kind of gems can you drop in that give enough description just to hold the audience, but you allow to sprout and grow later on? And again, I'm just going to keep going. Susan, Barb, me, Susan, Barb, me.
Actually, if I could piggyback on that, you're raising two thoughts in my head. Number one, like the two openings that were just given, like, "Do you mind?" and "Are you shitting me?" You get voice immediately.
Yes.
And as soon as you
Yep.
have voice, you have character. You know, that it communicates so much in 3 words. And then the other thing, Stephen, that you were talking about setting those clues. One of the important things that an opening needs to do is it needs to establish the contract between the author and the reader, which is the genre, right? So for instance, if you are writing, as somebody mentioned, a romance or something comic, that needs to be telegraphed right away in the opening. And opening is, you know, depends on the length you're thinking about. Actually, Elvis has got a question in the chat that we should talk about, which is the length of an opening, depending on whether you're writing a short story or a novel and how much time you actually have to set all that up. But the contract tells the reader immediately, oh, this is science fiction. So if you say, we've got a van, and then immediately it's got a solar panel on, and then there's another clue that shows it's this post-apocalyptic,
Yeah.
you can do that without ever slowing up the pace, right? If you say they ran to the van, well, you've got the pace and you've got the van, right? So those clues can be very efficiently woven into action. So it never slows the story down, but it communicates the contract, the setting, the characters, the voice, all of that. It takes a lot of work. I mean, on the writer's part, you have to be thinking about every single word.
Yeah.
But for the reader, it's just so smooth that they don't even notice that they've been given all that. They're just into the story, right?
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, Barb, anything?
You know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to pass on this. I have some things to say later, but Reed just showed up, and he's supposed to be on this panel instead of me. So I think Reed needs to introduce himself to everybody and talk about a couple of the things that we talked about earlier, like.
Thanks for the catch.
I don't know what we talk about. I don't know.
Okay, Reed, unmute.
Sorry, I missed it. I was I thought I was coming to a later panel, and then I realized I had the wrong panel, and then I realized that the panel I was supposed to be on had already started. I apologize deeply. I'm Reed Alexander. I write cosmic horror, creature features, and young adult horror, and I agonize over the opening line. Like, so, I mean, I could use like any one of my books here as an example, but you know, I usually use it to just sort of start with like a hook. You know, like that's what I strive for, is to start with the hook, because I want someone to be the idea is you want someone to be instantly interested with that very first line, right? In one of my self-published pieces, which was called Bend or Break, the very first line was, "The thrill of the hunt is undescribable." And I just hoped that people wanted to know what the hell he was talking about. So what did I miss? What do you guys want me to talk about?
Actually, you mentioned a really good thing, like raising questions. We talked about the balance between grounding a person in a world, especially if it's science fiction or fantasy, which is not our normal world, right? So getting people feeling grounded without slowing the pace. So that was one of the things we talked about. Yeah.
So in my most recent novel, in the beginning, it just opens up with a single word: motels. Mm-hmm. That introduces you immediately to the setting that you should be expecting. You don't know if it's future, you don't know if it's like the 1960s, but you know you're in a motel, and the immediate line that follows that is how does anyone expect to get away with cheating if everyone does it in motels? So now you know that it's about something, and that sort of leads like the introduction of the character.
But I love that a single word can bring with it this entire, like as soon as you said that word motels, that's a strong word, right? I have a million associations from my life, from movies, like that's huge.
It is huge. And it also, one of the things that it really does is it instantly, as Susan said, gives the voice of the character who is telling the story, and also immediately sets the setting. You know, it's modern. There's no medieval, there's no Romans, there's nothing except modern. Now, as you said before, Reed, it could be any time since we had motels in the 20th century, but it's got to be at least after motor hotels became popular in the probably the early 30s. And so one word, evocative, right away. So you've really made it easier for yourself.
I do have a quick question if anybody's actually brought this up, but has anybody tried to sort of subvert like the audience's expectation with their first line? One of the first things I wrote when I was very young, this was like 12 years ago, 14 years ago. It starts off with, I hate Mondays. And you just start the conversation of the book about this guy who literally is just sick and tired of coming to his job every morning. And then you find out that he's being tortured, like literally being physically tortured. So like you set up this expectation. It's just like, oh my God, I hate Mondays. And then in the next scene, you find, like the very next scene, you find out that what he's referring to about hating Mondays is being tortured.
Because that's
great. Yeah. I think in general, like my first response to your question was clarity. There are three important things: A, B, C: accuracy, brevity, clarity. And of those three, clarity is the most important. So I would say openings are a particular time when you want to be extremely clear with your audience. But then you went on and gave that example, and I thought, oh my goodness, that's a great book. I want to read that. So I think the unreliable narrator and this kind of half-truth and miasma kind of setting or character is great. I think it's not a 101 though. I think it's maybe a notch up, something that you need to think and plan very carefully so that you do lead that reader through the story in a way that doesn't kick them out when they suddenly say, wait a minute, I'm out of here, right?
Felt like I was
think
breaking some unwritten rules there.
Yeah.
Well, I think it falls to the idea that you have to know the rules so you can break the rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, I think you did it very effectively there. But I think if anybody is beginning, that they're a little bit safer sticking with, let's be obvious for the audience and build up to this.
I've seen too many writers who say, I don't have to do this. They're trying to sell to genre magazines, but they want to give literary examples. Well, I don't really need a plot. I don't really need tension because my prose is so beautiful. It's like,
which may be true in another magazine. They may do it elsewhere, right?
But like, really, don't send it to me because I will turf that baby. And yeah, so.
Hey, can I throw in something that is literary and that is absolutely gorgeous, and I really love it, and it's got great tension.
Yes.
We were asked to talk about maybe our favorite opening paragraph. So this is not a sentence, this is a paragraph. And it's from Natalie Babbitt's book, Tuck Everlasting. I know they made a movie out of it, and I never saw the movie. I thought the movie didn't sound very good, but the book is amazing.
Okay.
Chance to read the book.
It was okay.
The first week of August hangs at the very top of summer, the top of the livelong year, like the highest seat of a Ferris wheel when it pauses in its turning. The weeks that come before are only a climb from balmy spring, and those that follow drop to the chill of autumn. But the first week of August is motionless and hot. It is curiously silent too, with blank white dawns and glaring noons and sunsets smeared with too much color. Often at night there's lightning, but it quivers all alone. There's no thunder, no relieving rain. These are strange and breathless days, the dog days, when people are led to do things they're sure to be sorry for after.
Totally setting. It's the whole paragraph is setting. And there's no character, there's no conflict. They've just given you this beautiful, beautiful picture. What's the next line, Susan?
I don't know. I don't have the book open in front of me, but
Oh, see, I would want to
you
know
want
the
to read
next
it,
line,
right? You
because
want to
if
read
the
it.
next line did not grab me, I probably, if I was going to buy it, I probably wouldn't.
Yeah,
I
well,
probably
and probably it does. But I would disagree with you on one point there, Barb. I think it's full of conflict. I mean, just when you stop to think about this tension, this balance between the climb from spring and and it's just balanced there on this pin.
Oh,
And you
it's beautiful in that sense, but I'm looking still for character. There has to be some conflict besides this, the conflict in the setting, like winter, fall, spring, summer, you know, or winter or summer. There has to be more.
so then maybe you wouldn't be the audience and it wouldn't go to on spec. But
I hope somebody would, if they added something really punchy right after that.
well, yeah, and probably it does. I don't know. As I say, the book's not in front of me, but it is actually a really amazing book, and it's done. Yeah, actually, it is genre because it's about.
It is, yeah.
You know what it is about? It's about living forever. Yeah.
I
So
haven't read
Larry,
the
what
book,
is-
saw the film.
I vaguely remember that from required reading back in school. I remember it slightly. Yeah.
Well, actually, that brings up a point about the first grabbing sentence. So many of the books in the school system tend to be more of a literary take, that it's actually turned people who would be fans of commercial fiction because they want that high action drama, turned them off reading. And I think that's one of the jobs of the commercial artist, to actually make that first sentence engaging enough that it grabs those people who don't really like reading because they've been overexposed to the literary, and says, no, there's something for you here too.
I feel that, like, when I was very young, you know, and I struggled with reading comprehension. I was really struggling with it. I suffer from dyslexia and ADHD. I had severe learning disabilities. And I have to say, like, the required reading that they shoved down our throats, like, was very disengaging.
Yeah.
I remember not liking a single book that I'd really read in school until All Quiet on the Western Front. And that's got a zinger for an opener.
Yeah,
Chuck
well, the
Everlasting,
thing,
by the way, took up Everlasting. The next, that's that long first paragraph. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4 short sentences that come after that. And the very next line is, one day at that time, not so very long ago, 3 things happened. And at first, there appeared to be no connection between them. And so that to me is the real hook. You have this nice leisurely kind of thing, and then it hooks into, oh my God, something is going to happen. Just so you know.
Okay, thank you for
Yeah.
doing research. You had the book right handy. Good for you.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd like to comment about all the about what you said about the books I had to read in school. I think that speaking as a literary writer, I think that's actually pretty depressing because I with my books, my goal is to get them into the high school English curriculum, and because if people aren't enjoying reading, then I'm thinking that students actually need books with engaging plots and things that things that would be interesting and yet acceptable for high school English classrooms. I think that's one of the main reasons why students are so turned off by reading, because it's mostly because of the theme of the novel. Like The Stone Angel is mostly about old age and stuff, and what 17-year-old is going to be interested in that? Contrast that to books like In Search of April Raintree and Lord of the Flies, which I think even you, Reed, would probably found a little bit engaging in high school.
I do remember Lord of the Flies fondly, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Reed, did you
Rare
ever have
exceptions.
to read the Outlanders? No, not Outlanders. Outsiders.
Mhm.
It doesn't sound familiar off the top of my head. We were riding the wave of educational like reformation when I was in grade school, and I ended up having to read Where the Red Fern Grows three separate times as required reading. Once in third grade, once in fifth grade, and once in sixth grade. And at that particular point, I'd never been all that fond of that particular book, and having to read it 3 times was terrible.
I had to read
Well,
22 4 times.
Well,
Hey,
moving
if
it back to the first chapter, the first paragraph, we've kind of dissected the first line. Carrying on from that, when we're moving into the first paragraph, what do you like to add? Like, how do you like to flesh out that initial
Action.
Barb?
Action. What
With
Reed
you.
said. Something's got to go. Something's got to happen. There's got to be something moving. I read a novel by Barbara Hamlin decades ago, and I bought it because it had a dragon on the cover, and I was into dragons at that time. And the very first page was, the first paragraph was the storm that was going, and the very next one was the character in that storm having to deal with it, and I was hooked, totally hooked. So,
Actually, I think something that fits really well in here is in the chat. I was just mentioning that Elvis has a question, or he says something about the difference between short stories and novels, and how much time do you have? Like, is it that much more leisurely, for instance, in a novel? Like short story, maybe you have to grab the reader in the page, whereas a novel, you have a whole chapter before you can grab them. What do you think about that?
I am firmly of the belief that your first line sells your first paragraph. Your first paragraph sells your first page. Your first page sells your first 10 pages. Your first 10 pages sells your book.
yep.
Yeah, and you can't let up. You cannot be leisurely in any kind of commercial writing. It has to be bang, bang, bang. It has to grab there. I believe it was Neil Gaiman who said that every word must pull weight.
Oh yeah.
And
I speaking of my struggles to get published for the first time, I can't tell you how many publishers that I ran into said if they're not engaged within the first 3 pages, they stop reading. Like, and that's just to get your book out there, you know. That's before you even make it to the audience, the fickle readers.
Yeah, and I would agree. I would say even at novel length, if you're writing 100,000 words, those 100,000, all of those words need to pull their weight, right?
Oh,
Not
yeah.
just, yeah, I would say.
I am not a very fast reader. So if I commit to reading something that you've written, it's got to be worth my time. And not to, I mean, I buy a lot of books, and I also read a lot of books for free. But if I pay 15 or 20 or sometimes $30 or $40 for your book, please don't let me go home and read 2 pages and go, oh, I'm glad I supported my friend by buying his or her book, but you know, I couldn't get through it. And I just don't have the time. to waste by giving the book 50 pages before I give it up. It's like, no. And for short stories, if my attention wanders after the first 500 words, I'm done. Like, if you have not caught me, if there's some kernel of something interesting in those 500 words, I might go back and think, well, maybe it's me. Maybe I need to go to the washroom or have a drink of water or something. I'll come back, try it again. And almost always I stop at exactly the same spot. And it's like, I'm done. So you might have that first 150 words and then you totally lose it in the next 150 words. So every word does count. Boy, I don't waste time.
Yeah. One thing one point I'd like to make, and it goes back to what we were discussing earlier, of not different people enjoy different types of openings, but not all people read the same way. Like you read, I find it interesting that there are two people who are both diagnosed dyslexics on a writing panel. It doesn't happen that often.
Actually.
You want to hear something crazy? I was illiterate until I was about 10 years old. The school system did not exactly do a very good job with my learning disabilities. So for the first years of my life, I was illiterate.
Back when I was going through, I was literally in one of the first classes that was specifically for dyslexics in Canada because it had only just been recognized. They wanted to send me to a school for the mentally retarded.
But people with ADHD tend to be actually smarter than the average, in actual fact. But did you know there is a 60% overlap between people with ADHD and people with a learning disability? I know I was a teacher for 28 years, and I got 4 kids, 3 of whom have ADHD. Doesn't fall too far from the truth.
Well, part of it is if you're not catching it, you get bored. So of course you start acting out and you don't learn to have an attention span. I'm going to do something. Okay, people can't see it, but this is Cloning Freedom. It's my latest one out, and it has 2 editions, one of which is dyslexia friendly.
Oh, good for you.
So, yeah, it was my. I'm sorry?
How did you do that?
It's slightly larger print, uses boldface instead of italics for emphasis.
Yes.
And a bit better paragraph spacing. And my publisher just kept bouncing fonts off me until I found one that actually worked.
Good for you.
You're my hero, man.
Good for you.
So, but you know, where I was going with this is because of the way that I read much slower than a person with my same level of education. Mm-hmm. However, as a compensatory mechanism, I have developed really high retention. And as a result, this factors into me just wanting that something happening all the time in the book. Because I'm retaining so much, I've got to be engaged. Yeah. And if I'm not, it takes me so long to get to the next thing, I lose interest. And you're really, with your opening, with your book in general, you're targeting the type of reader. And people occupy a range in their reading modalities.
Wow.
That's true.
Do you know, I wonder if it's too late for me to get diagnosed.
Never.
It's possible.
When I was in grade 2, everybody was reading, and I was like in the slow reader group because I couldn't read. And then I think one of my mom's aunts gave me a book called Whitefoot the Wood Mouse, and I was to read it while the 3 of them, my aunts and my mom, were all chatting. And it was the first book I ever owned, was Whitefoot the Wood Mouse.
Can I just hijack the panel just a little bit, because I think we're ending in about 10 minutes, and there's 2 things I'd really like to throw in very quickly. Number 1, openings I think it's really important, whether you're writing short story or novel, you write your best opening that you can, but finish the piece and then come back and look at your opening again, because there should be some resonance, some over connecting, whether it's plot or theme or character or whatever it is you're doing. That opening line is really important. So's the ending line, and there should be a mirroring or a reflection.
Oh, I like that. Bookend.
But the other thing I want to, because I know we've only got 10 minutes, I just want to mention something that Donald Moss says about openings. And that is that, as you know from novel structure, often there's a life before section. Before you get into the first major event, you know, your first turning point, or your first inciting incident. And there can be 3 or 4 pages, or even a chapter, or even a third of, well, maybe not a third of the book, but a big chunk before you get to that first major event. And Donald Moss, as you all know probably, is a major New York agent. And so he says he will reject 90% of the material he receives because there's not enough tension on that first line, first paragraph, first page. But he talks about bridging tension, which is the tension that gets you from that first line into the first major incident. And somebody was mentioning, I think it was Stephen earlier, you know, a James Bond movie will start with an action sequence that may be very tenuously related to the story of the movie. And so what Donald Moss would say is you need that bridging tension, some action, some event, some kind of tension that gets you through. But I think he would also say that that tension should be related to your theme or your action of the main story as well. I'm going to stop talking because, yeah, 9 minutes left doesn't give us much time. But those were 2 points I just thought were important about openings we should mention.
Yeah, just as a quick example of how I did that, I establish in that opening conflict that my tinker has medical skills, and then I fall back to the title of the book, Tinker's Plague. So your title can actually become part of your dramatic line, because if the title is foreshadowing what's in the book, it provides that bridge that you're speaking of. You just have to put stuff in that relates to it.
Yeah.
So I think that was an excellent point, Sue.
Yeah.
Okay, why doesn't everybody go through and say where you can find your books and any closing thoughts, because we have 8 minutes left and that gives us each 2 minutes to do it. And okay, we'll start with Sue because you're up on my screen, and then we'll do Barb, Reed, and I'll come in at the end.
Okay. I was asked to actually provide an opening paragraph from my own book, and I'd love to throw it in here right now.
Go for it.
Hugh de Larcan, High King of Shangril, sat in the darkened room holding his wife's hand. Beyond the velvet drapes, fall sunshine gilded the fluttering leaves of poplar trees in his queen's garden, and birds gathered on fruit-laden boughs in preparation for flight to warmer climes. But here within, carpets and bed curtains suffocated all sound and stilled the heavy air. The tiny, still form of their son lay on the bed beside her.
Oh,
That grips.
Kill
That
babies in the
grips.
first paragraph? I don't know. Anyway, yeah.
That makes me feel very small.
That's in an unpublished upcoming book, so maybe it'll get edited out before it. Anyway, yes. Flights of Marigold, my current book on the shelves, and the first book of the series, Bursts of Fire, and my website is speculative-fiction.ca.
Okay.
sweet.
Barb?
Sweet. Okay. Most recent short story is in Galaxy's Edge, which you can get through Amazon and Waitlist Books. You can get digital or hard copies. Of a contemporary romance. You can also get all of these on Amazon or Smashwords, the usual things. And then my old trilogy, I'm not in favor of the cover, but that's the first one, is Druids. And I guess that's all.
Okay. Reed?
You can pick up any of my books at madnessheart.press. That's madnessheart.press. The most recent of which is In the Beginning, which is a cosmic horror creature feature. And the first of which is also a cosmic horror creature feature, In the Shadow of the Mountain. And there will be a young adult collection coming out soon through Madness Heart Press. And that would be the Unnatural Perpetrators Department series, the UPD series. So look for that in 2 months. And then at the end of 2021, I'll have another 2 cosmic horror creature features being released at the same time through madnessheart.press.
Oh, great.
Okay.
And I forgot to mention On Spec Magazine, the Canadian magazine of speculative fiction. If you subscribe, I love you. If you don't subscribe, you're off my Christmas card list.
Okay, and just to tell everybody, I have posted the address for the Keycon vendors room in the chat. And I'm going to steal one from you, Sue, and I'm going to read the first line from my latest, Cloning Freedom. This is not a good plan. Carl crouched behind some bushes at the edge of the ruined laboratory grounds. His skin and hair blended with the background. A gutted building stood in front of him. You should have said that before, said Rowan. He did say that before, remarked Fran.
It's wonderful. I love it.
So,
I'm good writer.
my website is www.stephenpearl.com, and you can see it up above. And I am in the vendors room. So I want to thank all of the panelists for your participation. I want to thank the audience for coming out and listening to us ramble on for a while. And hopefully everybody got a little bit of something out of it.
Yeah,
And
thank you for inviting me.
I'd like to invite anyone to help me with the panel Publishing for Dummies, or Getting Published for Dummies. The idea that I had come up with is that people would simply share their experiences getting published or self-publishing, and somehow I was the only person who got put on the panel. So if anybody wants to show up and just share their experiences, so people looking to get published can get a little advice, please show up.
Sure. What time?
when is it?
Oh geez, it's at 1 my time, 12 your time.
11 our time, Susan.
11 your time. 11 your time. I'm sorry.
We're in 3 different time zones here.
Yeah.
Okay, so Publishing for Dummies, you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, Getting Published for Dummies. It was supposed to be Getting Published by Dummies for Dummies.
Yeah, it's in
It's
the
in programming room 2 on Discord.
right. Okay.
Right. It's
All right.
an hour from now.
Yeah.
An hour from now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I
Okay.
probably could do that.
I might be able to pop in, but we have Susan and I have a long panel right after that.
Right after that. Yeah.
So we might
Yeah.
pop in for a while.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, I'll probably pop in for the start, but I've got a panel coming up as well after. So
Anybody
and
who
if
wants to
anybody
share their
wanted to,
experiences is welcome.
come to my panel on creating better aliens, you're more than welcome, because there's only 2 of us and it's the more the merrier.
So I just saw a message from Rob, and I want Rob to tell me how he managed to do that chat. Oh my gosh, look at all the chats. Thank you, never mind. Oh, I better go read it before you close this.
I will save the file and it can be available to anyone who wants it.
Okay, thanks.
But I would love to say thank you all. This has been a fantastic panel. And as con-chair, one of the only reasons I'm getting to see the panels is I'm running the tech. But I love the fact that this is giving us panel ideas for next year. And I'm really hoping I'm going to see all of you next year. Well, Susan, you're tied into it already. So I'm hoping Barb can actually come in person because I'd love to give her hugs.
You know, I have been wanting to come back so much. You treated me so very well when I was there. Oh, it's been quite a long time now, 10 years easily. It was before Gerald Brandt even sold one story. And now he's like a famous writer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would definitely love to come back. Take the train.
Yeah.
It'd be so fun.
And Stephen and Reed, thank you very much, especially coming from a distance. If you can ever come in person, you'll be more than welcome. And if
I
you
will
can
give
only,
it a good old college try.
yeah.
The wife has
And even
actually
if
been
you could-
hinting that next year might be a possibility.
Woohoo.
Yeah.
And if not, we will be doing Zoom again next year in addition to the live. So we'll have a way of interacting it. This is our goal. We will do it.
Okay,
into
well,
it.
that sounds great. That's great. So,
All right.
Reed, you're in the Albany area?
Yeah, Albany region, capital region, New York. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's close to Canada.
I'm not far. I used to frequent Canada when I was much younger.
Well, you can come back. We still like you.
I'm still
I look forward to it.
Great. Well, thanks for your note there, Rob. All right, good.
All right. I'm saving the
time.
chat.
Bye, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.